Hello, I'm Jacinta Appleby. Welcome to the online inset training programme for GCSE Art and Design. This coursework marking training event is designed for teachers delivering our Pearson Edexcel GCSE Art and Design qualification. The training is broken down into 4 modules, of which modules 1 to 3 can be completed in your own time, and you can visit them as many times as you need. The structure of the modules is based around the principles we use when training our moderators. The 4 modules are as follows. Module 1, Understanding the Assessment Requirements for Component 1 and 2. Module 2, Applying the Assessment Grids for Components 1 and 2. Module 3, Understanding the marks given for each portfolio in Module 2. Module 4, a live Q&A session. The aim is to give you guidance and insight into the assessment tools provided by the specification. This will enable you to mark your candidate's work fairly and accurately. The examples of candidates' work are not intended to represent recommended course structures or delivery. We are using them purely as real examples of work to which we can apply the assessment tools. Module 1. This module will take you through the assessment requirements for the specification. To support your understanding of how to apply the taxonomy and assessment grid, regardless of which title you are delivering. As part of this training, we will look at an exemplar portfolio, apply the assessment grids, and determine a mark for the work. On completion of this module, you can move on to Module 2, where you can practice marking several portfolios for each component at a convenient time and place. Qualification structure. The GCSE comprises of 2 components, personal portfolio and externally set assignment, ESA. The personal portfolio is worth 60% of the GCSE and the externally set assignment is worth 40% of the GCSE. There is a total of 72 marks available for each of the components. Component 1, Personal Portfolio. For Component 1, students create a personal portfolio of work in response to themes, tasks, projects or briefs set by the Centre in consultation with students. Centres are free to devise any themes, projects, tasks or briefs appropriate to their students and resources. Themes, projects, tasks or briefs may each have a separate focus or be interconnected. However, the projects chosen must give students the opportunity to show their ability to construct a sustained line of reasoning which is coherent, relevant and logically structured. All knowledge, skills, understanding and activities should therefore be relevant to the student's creative journey. The work undertaken for this component should be part of a substantive project or projects rather than a series of disjointed tasks, and work should evidence all 4 assessment objectives holistically. Students' work must comprise of supporting studies and personal response. All work is internally marked and standardised, and a sample of work will be moderated by a visiting moderator. Component 2, Externally Set Assignment. For Component 2, students present personal response to an externally set, broad-based thematic starting point set in the ESA paper released on the 2nd of January. Centres are free to devise their own preparatory period of study prior to the start of the 10-hour sustained focus period. Students' work must comprise of preparatory studies and a personal response. Please note, once the sustained focus period begins, the preparatory study period has concluded and all work on preparatory studies should stop, and students should not have access to them, except in the timed sessions. Although they may refer to them only, they should not add to or alter them. The ESA represents the culmination of the GCSE because it requires students to draw together the knowledge, understanding and skills they have developed throughout the course. It gives students another opportunity to demonstrate their ability to construct a sustained line of reasoning. For Component 2, students' work must show evidence of all 4 assessment objectives. All work is internally marked and standardised. A sample of work will be moderated by a visiting moderator. GCSE taxonomy. How to use the taxonomy in conjunction with assessment grid. The first stage when marking work is to decide in which performance level the candidate's work should be placed. When assessing work for each component, teachers should make a holistic judgment using the descriptors in the GCSE taxonomy to establish which performance level matches most closely the candidate's work. Candidates should be placed in the performance level that best exemplifies the characteristics of their work. Candidates' work that falls between 2 performance levels must achieve all the keyword descriptors in the lower level and some in the level above. Where this happens, teachers must use their professional judgment to decide which performance level is most appropriate using a best fit approach. Please note, all marking should be supported by referencing standard marked exemplars from the website. Using standard marked exemplars in conjunction with the taxonomy and assessment grid will help ensure that teacher assessment decisions are secure and accurate. You will be able to download a booklet of standard marked exemplars to support this training. An example of comparing a standard marked exemplar from the standards book with a Component 1 portfolio will be seen later in this presentation. After a performance level has been established, the next stage is to use the assessment grid to decide a mark within the performance level. Teachers should read the instructions for use, which accompanies the assessment grid, prior to establishing a mark for each assessment objective and a total mark. GCSE assessment grid. You should use the assessment grid to assess all student work for both components and all titles. The assessment grid assesses the 4 assessment objectives equally. The 4 assessment objectives are in the first column, with performance descriptors running across the grid. The levels of performance head the 6 remaining columns. The 6 levels of performance each contain 3 marks. There is a maximum of 18 marks available for each assessment objective. Note that 0 marks should be awarded where work has not achieved the required standard for this qualification. Teachers should use standard marked exemplars to establish if 0 marks should be awarded. The descriptors in the assessment grid should be understood as follows. Limited, insufficient knowledge, understanding and skills. Minimal evidence of and lack of structure in the development and recording of ideas. Basic, some knowledge, understanding and skills demonstrated, but they are simplistic and deliberate. Some structure and repetition in the development and recording of ideas. Emerging competent, knowledge, understanding and skills are generally adequate but safe. Competent and consistent, knowledge, understanding and skills are secure and cohesive throughout. Confident and assured, knowledge, understanding and skills are effective and focused throughout. Exceptional, knowledge, understanding and skills are in-depth, perceptive and accomplished throughout. When assessing student work, you should refer to published standard marked exemplars to establish a secure understanding of how descriptors relate to practical evidence. Use the bulleted descriptors in each box to determine which level of performance the evidence meets best, working through each assessment objective separately. Use the descriptors holistically. There is not 1 mark available per descriptor. Decide whether the evidence just meets, mostly meets, or fully meets the descriptors in the level of performance to determine the appropriate mark within the level of performance. Use a best fit approach to award the mark that corresponds most closely to the descriptors that have been met, where evidence for an assessment objective meets descriptors from 2 or more different levels of performance. Then determine a mark out of 18 for each assessment objective. Then add the marks for each assessment objective together for a total mark out of 72. Internal standardisation. Internal standardisation ensures that the work of all candidates within a centre have been marked to the same standard. It must be carried out where more than one teacher examiner has marked work in a centre. Effective internal standardisation should be carried out within each component across all teaching groups and across all titles. Rank order. Internal standardisation requires teachers to place candidates' work in a rank order. Internal standardisation enables teachers to make comparable judgments by placing candidates' work in a rank order. Placing a submission of work in rank order secures a candidate's work in a fair and correct position in a range of marks. Internally standardising and using rank order is the precise way teachers can test the accuracy of their judgments. Placing submissions of work side by side enables teachers to compare the visual characteristics of each submission regardless of the endorsed title.
Using standard marked exemplars. Standard marked exemplars help teachers make accurate and secure assessment decisions and should always be used in conjunction with the GCSE taxonomy and GCSE assessment grid. Regardless of the title, it's the visual characteristics of the standard marked exemplars that will help support teacher assessment decisions. Standard marked exemplars have the same visual characteristics regardless of the component that they belong to. We're going to look at a standard marked exemplar later in this presentation from the online exemplar gallery. The exemplars in the gallery are an integral part of GCSE Art and Design assessment training and can be downloaded and used to help you make fair and accurate assessment decisions. How to mark GCSE Art and Design. There are 3 straightforward steps to marking Art GCSE. Firstly, line up the visual characteristics of the work you want to mark with a standard marked exemplar from the Standards Gallery. Then, use the GCSE taxonomy to establish the performance level. Then use the assessment grid to fine-tune your assessment decision and establish a mark breakdown, a total mark. Always use the best fit approach. We will now look at one of the standard marked exemplars from the online exemplar gallery. This exemplar is from Component 1, Performance Level 6 on a mark of 63. We're going to scroll through slides 13 to 24. The slides contain pages from a Component 1 sketchbook. Slide 21 contains work produced outside of the sketchbook, and on slide 22 you can see the 2 resolved A1 outcomes. While looking through the slides, we can see that this exemplar contains an extensive range of accomplished drawing and painting techniques. The work is focused, intelligent and refined, with a clear and convincing development of ideas. Annotation is purposeful and meaningful, with perceptive critical analysis. A focused and sequential submission of work with evidence of risk-taking is seen in the experiments with different media, processes and scale. Candidates' work is supported by highly effective use of their own photography. Knowledge, understanding and skills are in depth, perceptive and accomplished. There is an overall sense that the body of work is advanced. The manipulation and control of the visual language when drawing and painting is exceptional. This is particularly clear in these final 2 slides. Therefore, the submission justifies a mark just into the exceptional performance level in assessment objectives 2, 3 and 4. The marks awarded are A01 15, AO2 16, AO3 16 and in AO4 16. The work fully meets all the criteria from Performance Level 5 on the taxonomy. In Assessment Objectives 2, 3 and 4, the work just achieves the exceptional ability in Performance Level 6. Examiner comments give more detail.
A new candidate exemplar, Sarah. You will be able to compare the visual characteristics of the exemplar with Sarah's fine art submission on 64 marks. Please note, the reason why we've chosen a high-performing candidate is because it's much easier to see the similarities in the visual characteristics at the higher level. Component 1, Sarah. Level 6, Fine Art, 64 marks. In the work you are going to see, there is evidence of proficient painting and drawing techniques. The work is powerful and intelligent, with strong development of ideas. Sarah shows evidence of adept exploration of ideas, selecting and experimenting with materials, techniques and processes. Annotation is purposeful and meaningful with strong analysis. It is a focused and sequential submission of work. Sarah shows evidence of accomplished drawing throughout, supported by her own photography. Sarah's knowledge, understanding and skill are in-depth, perceptive and accomplished throughout. Sarah is an exceptional candidate in all the assessment objectives. Component 1, Submission of Candidate's Work, Level 6, Fine Art, 64 marks, continued. Some teachers will be thinking, why hasn't Sarah achieved a higher mark? In other words, how could she do better? Let's get that out of the way. Because the standard marked exemplars are telling us that Sarah's work is not better than the Component 1 standard marked exemplar in the standards booklet on 64 marks. Sarah achieved 64 marks. Why? Because the visual characteristics of the work match some of the word descriptors on the GCSE taxonomy in Level 6 and the descriptor on the GCSE assessment grid in Level 6, along with a standard marked exemplar that is just into the Performance Level 6. You can see a clear mark breakdown on the slide. Justification of marks, visual evidence. Looking at the keyword descriptors on the taxonomy, the words that best describe Sarah's final outcomes and preparatory studies are powerful and accomplished within the exceptional level. Looking at the assessment grid, the descriptor that best fits Sarah's work is the Level 6 descriptor on the assessment grid. Knowledge, understanding and skills are in-depth, perceptive and accomplished throughout. Now let's look at the visual evidence. In this slide, Sarah demonstrates exceptional critical understanding of the context of her own ideas and the sources that have informed them. Annotation is purposeful and meaningful with in-depth analysis. In this slide, Sarah demonstrates exceptional critical understanding of the context of her own ideas and the sources that have informed them. Annotation is purposeful and meaningful with in-depth analysis, exceptional experimentation and exploration with materials and techniques, and this continues throughout the submission of work. In this slide, Sarah demonstrates proficient painting and drawing techniques. Sarah is an accomplished technician throughout. From the evidence in this slide, it is clear that Sarah can use an extensive range of painting and drawing techniques proficiently. It is also showing exceptional experimentation and exploration with materials and techniques, and this continues throughout the submission of work. In this slide, Sarah shows evidence of adept exploration of ideas, selecting and experimenting with materials, techniques and processes. Also, Sarah makes discerning use of her own photography to develop ideas. In this slide, Sarah shows exceptional evidence of drawing. In this slide, Sarah demonstrates that the development of her ideas through investigations shows exceptional ability. In this slide, there is evidence of an exceptional ability to explore ideas through a process of experimentation and review. In this slide, Sarah's final outcomes demonstrate an exceptional understanding of visual language through the application of formal elements, which is also evident throughout the whole submission. In summary then, Sarah achieved an overall total of 64 marks out of 72. Why? Because the visual characteristics of the work match the keyword descriptors on the GCSE taxonomy and the descriptors on the GCSE assessment grid, along with the standard marked exemplar just into Performance Level 6. Assessment Objective 1, 16. Assessment Objective 2, 16. Assessment Objective 3, 16. Assessment Objective 4, 16. Total, 64. Sarah is an exceptional candidate in all assessment objectives. Next steps. Now that you've completed Module 1, Understanding the Assessment Requirements, move on to Module 2, where you can practice applying the assessment tools to 8 exemplars at a convenient time and place. If at any point you need clarification or a refresher, feel free to go back to Module 1 in your own time and pace before moving on to Module 2. In Module 3, we will reveal the marks and explain why each mark was awarded for the 8 exemplars you mark in Module 2. You might want to take some notes or write down questions you might want answered in the Q&A in Module 4. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found this presentation useful. Good luck.